one parent and no other adult. The United States stands over 3 times the world average of 7% of children raised by one parent. For reference, the number stands at 3% in China, 4% in India. This is not an area we want to be competing with other countries, by the way. If there is a statistic to not be competing in, this is one of the statistics. China's at 3, India's at 4, the world's at 7. We're at 23%.
Really be mindful and for those single mothers out there, you know, there are men out there, like, look for mentorship for your sons. Look for someone and be very careful. Naturally, you know, you don't want to put your kid in a vulnerable place, or just showing them different videos and different things, whatever, because now we have a lot of people who are doing this stuff online. So you don't have to put your child with another person physically, but teach so you can try to just help them to learn what it is like to be a man and teach your daughters how to understand the value of a man.
And I think that sets the stage for our next video too, because being a man is not something that a woman can teach. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think this video by Patrick here is going to definitely put a spotlight on this idea of what you already talking about.
What we can teach our sons is what a woman's supposed to look like. So yeah, you have to fill a couple different roles to the capacity that you can as a woman, but making sure you tell your son, always be that man that's there to provide for your family. Always be that man that's there to protect your family. And be that woman who is showing him the softness, the peace, the joy that a woman's supposed to present. You're going to have strengths and, you know.
And I've also seen, like, a lot of men today, they can choose. They can choose to do better. You know, unfortunately, you're climbing an uphill battle, but doesn't necessarily mean it's not possible. I've seen men who came from single parenting home and they choose to be good men. They may not have had the experience. I'm sure they all held back to a degree, but like, again, that's not an excuse for me not to be a better man. I mean, I have to look at it and say, I wasn't raised with my father, but I'm going to be a better father. Yeah. You know, I didn't have a good example of manhood in my life. This doesn't mean I can't learn and grow. Yeah. And I think it's just one of those things. It might take time for you. Of course it will. It's not natural because you have to build that. You have to learn that. It's like a whole new life skills, you know, so, and it takes a long time to learn. So again, as men, we can do better. I mean, not having that doesn't mean
Janice.
It's okay. Janice says.
She had to learn that he wasn't being an a-hole. It's just like a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things is not necessarily that they're being a butthead. Right? Yeah. And so that's something that we just automatically are like, oh, he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand. Like, he's doing it intentionally. It's not intentional.
Darth Vader says that's the exception, not the rules. True. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go over to Patrick, because Patrick is going to talk about fathers now. We're going to see how this is all connected. Watch this.
Stats I want to share with you about fatherless homes. And by the way, I have some disturbing stats I want to share with you about fatherless homes. And by the way, some of the stats, you're like, I've seen this before. I'm going to tell you, when you read some of these stats, you're going to sit there and say, that is insane. By the way, these stats are from 2021 of the impact a father makes in a child upbringing, both a girl and a boy. Like I said, disturbing, but you will be shell-shocked with the stats. If you get value from the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let me get right into it. The U.S. has the highest rate of children living in a single-parent household of any nation in the world. About 80% of single-parent homes are led by single mothers, at a rate of 23% of children living with one parent and no other adult. The United States stands over 3 times the world average of 7% of children raised by one parent. For reference, the number stands at 3% in China, 4% in India. This is not an area we want to be competing with other countries, by the way. If there is a statistic to not be competing in, this is one of the statistics. China's at 3, India's at 4, the world's at 7. We're at 23% in America. Zero bragging rights. This is the stat everybody wants to hide. And this is the stats where the side effects of this, we ain't going to see for 2 decades or 3 decades or longer. Takes a while to see the side effects. Let me continue. Even for children with a father present in the home, the average school-age boy only spends about 30 minutes per week with one-on-one conversations with his father. For comparison, the same boy, on average, will spend about 44 hours a week watching television, playing video games, and surfing the internet. In our house, there is no video games throughout the week. It's on the weekends. After you read 150 pages throughout the week, then you have the right to play video games for an hour or two on the weekend, and that's what you have to earn. You have to move your body, you have to exercise. There's certain things you need to do to get to that point. That's our household, but the stat tells you 44 hours a week of watching TV, playing video games, and surfing the internet. Let me continue. 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 63% of teen suicides, 85% of children and teens with behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. Let me read that stat to you one more time. 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 63% of all teen suicide, 85% of children and teens with behavioral disorder come from fatherless homes. That is a very, very big number. Next, fatherlessness likewise has a direct link to teen pregnancy and sexual activity. Roughly 70% of teenage pregnancies come from women raised in a fatherless home. 70% of teenage pregnancies comes from fatherless homes. 70%. That's a big number. And these same women have significantly higher abortion rates than women raised by both a father and a mother. On the whole, fatherless kids are 20 times more likely to be incarcerated and 11 times more likely to exhibit violent behavior than children from two-parent household. 20 times more, okay? 20 times more. If a man and a wife raise a child, they're less likely to end up in jail, but they have the same chances as children raised by just their father. You may already be blown away by the stats before, so maybe come back and let me read this to you and brace for impact if you missed it. Let me read it one more time. Listen. Just stay with me. Don't get distracted. Stay with me. Listen. If a man and a wife raise a child, they're less likely to end up in jail, but they have the same chance as children raised by just their fathers.
Okay.
Husband and wife raise their kid.
I want to hear that
The
again.
chance of this kid going to jail is the same as just the father raising his kids. The problem is the single mother without a father in the picture that can sit there and discipline the kids, give them hope, values, principles, all the other stuff. We play different roles. This is statistic. If somebody's watching this saying, oh my God, you're discounting women, you're discounting mothers, go get upset at the stats, not at me. This is stats. You can't get upset at 3 times 3 is 9. That's stats. I'm giving you stats that's being given to us by the government because they have access to these stats. This is disturbing. Let me continue. Girls with no fathers have lower self-esteem. We can lower crime, lower mental issues, help the economy, lower suicide rates, and decrease homelessness by bringing back the family nucleus. There are things that my wife can do as a mother that I can't do. There's things she can bring that I can't bring. But there are things I can do that she can't do. So now you may say, well, Pat, I agree. I do agree. We can lower this. We can. But then how come it's not happening? And here's the other question. Who's to blame? Who do we blame with this? Now, you may be listening to this saying, well, it's got to be the husband and wife's fault. It's got to be the man and the woman's fault. Fine. How come it's not the same ratios around the world? Why is U.S. fatherlessness at 23%? Everywhere else is 7% average. So is it really the mom and dad? So how about the mom and dad in India? How about the mom and dad in China? How about the mom and dad in Germany? How about the mom and dad in Brazil? How about the mom and dad in other places? Why are we at 23%? How did this happen? Was it like this before? Is it an evolution? Is it mainstream media? Is it Hollywood? Is it the fact that parents are afraid of parenting because everybody is so much involved? You can't do that to your kid. You can't do this to your kid. You can't discipline your kid like that. Whose fault is it? It's someone's fault. Is it the fact that, hey, you know, we can't really bring church and schools and pray and all this stuff? I don't know. Maybe that's not something you agree with. Maybe it is. Maybe we need those values and principles. But it's somebody's fault in America that this is happening. This is purely a systemic issue that we're having. This cannot be like in, no, it's really the community, it's the parents, it's the culture, it's all this other stuff. No, standards are standards. We're sitting there not educating. Ah, it's not a big deal. Go ahead and do that. Ah, it's not a big deal. Go ahead and do that. Ah, it's not a big deal. Go ahead and do that. No. Standards have dropped, and the numbers are showing. If we judged a country based on how many kids are being raised by fatherless homes that's producing crimes at the levels that we're getting, sex during teenage pregnancy, abortion, suicide, incarceration, maybe we ought to look at this. Maybe this is very important. Maybe our educational system sucks. Maybe. Kids spend more time around teachers than they do around their parents.
Yep.
Maybe. Who do we blame? The responsibility has to lie on the nation. Maybe we're either too much involved or we're not selling. Take your time to get married. Take your time before you have sex with someone. Take your time before you get pregnant. Take your time before you have a baby. Protect yourself. Stay home. Do not just go out there and have unprotected sex. Maybe we're not talking about this kind of stuff. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. The stat says we're not selling it in the right way, and we're paying a price for it. If you're in a community that crime is high, hello, you're feeling it. That's the stats. So the next time you see a father that takes their job as a father seriously, you can actually say, you know how we see somebody in military uniform? Guess what you say? Hey, thank you for your service. What do you mean? Hey, man, stats, 23% fatherlessness. And you're there with your kids. Thank you for your service. Being a father is tough. Good for you guys, husband and wife, trying to make this work. Marriage is tough. Salute. You make my life better and safer by raising good kids. Salute to you. Maybe. Maybe we ought to give those awards. Maybe we need to kind of recognize Father of the Year award, a bigger deal. Man, if I ran a state or a country, we would be recognizing certain behavior and turning great fathers and mothers into heroes. Into heroes. Because God knows their job is hard, very hard. Not, making their job harder, and not recognizing the guys that are doing a good job, just kind of winging it, which is the way we're doing it right now.
almost done.
Stats don't favor us. We got some work to do. This is an area, well, I will very comfortably say America's got a lot of work to do. We've stepped away from values and principles, and we're kind of winging it. Anyways, no one masters parenting, and none of us know if we're going to be great parents or not for about 40 years until our kids are 40 years old. By the time you know you're a great parent, you're probably not alive because your grandkids will validate that you were a good parent. So you're never going to know whether you were a great parent or not. But I made a video from all the different things I've learned and what I apply in my life about parenting called How to Raise Successful Kids. If you've never seen it, click here to watch that video. Shout out to those of you guys that take your job as a father very seriously. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
I think there are three things that he said: heroes, valuable, and man, I wanted to pause at least. I forget what he said, but I think it's so important to understand. Who do we put on a pedestal here in America? We don't put fathers and mothers on pedestals. We put entertainers. We put people who have no real.
That's a good point.
They're not really edifying our children. They're not edifying our homes. They're entertaining us. They're just for.
True.
There's no reality as to how there's no real thing there's no fruit that they bear in our homes. We think about it. Who's in the Golden Globes? Who are we listening to when they talk about, who said something and it's a great saying that they said? It's not people who are really doing anything to build up our homes. We should be really putting mothers and fathers on pedestals when they're doing great things, or really honing in on how to have great families. But we already know the plan is to deteriorate the family structure. So I know one thing is, I think I've said it before, I saw that in China, TikToks are elevated for how scientific they are, how inventive they are, how they produce something for their community, for the society. Here, TikToks are elevated if they're just entertaining.
Yeah.
If they, just give you a dopamine shot or hit your limbic system.
Yep.
It's not really fruitful.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
It's not the same at all.
And I think, we have to just get back to seeing the value and importance. What did he say? It's just, we're kind of winging it, just winging parenting. Get back to principles and standards of living for the homes. I love that. I think Obama was the same way. In his house, there wasn't television. There wasn't There wasn't anything until the weekend. And I think that's a great standard to have until you read and did things of that nature. So I'm so glad he said that because it'll help me just reflect and think about how we're running our own home because it's so important to do that.
Being intentional about. I think it's also another thing that really, really stood out to me is the amount of time spent with the kids. Because to me, it's like they can spend time with TV. And I've been making sure myself I'm more intentional about that. And I'm looking at other areas to grow. And I'm like, what can I do to spend time with my daughter? So we did a reaction video, finding different ways to communicate truth to her, not just with a Bible study. And also BJ, let's spend some time together. And he had this gun and we started playing with that. And we had bets. He's supposed to read a book if I win. And if he wins, he's supposed to get $10 toward his whatever is saving. But nevertheless, I'm trying to figure out ways as fathers to intentionally invest in my family.
Yeah.
Because I think what he's saying is, I think the most essential thing that I can look back as a son and say, I did not have that. I wish I had more of that. And I've heard a video from a 50 Cent son. 50 Cent's son was talking and he was blasting his father, and his father gives him he literally paid his child support until the age of 18. And this kid is making over, I think it's like close to 600 something, $60,000 something dollars or $6,000 a month or something like that. Don't quote me on that.
High.
But he's getting good money.
Yeah.
And what he was complaining about, and 50 Cent was pushing back against it, he was saying, I wish you will take back all the money
Spend time
and come
with me.
to my basketball games.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that was a dagger, because you just can't replace yourself with anything else
Yep.
in the life of your son.
Yep. Yep.
You can't. And to do it is to do them a great disservice. And eventually they will spit in your face.
And I think that's something that fathers unfortunately recognize later in life. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen that situation many times before where the father's like, man, I can see now, I wish I would have spent more time.
Yeah.
And people have counseled them to spend more time. And it's not about money, it's about time. You can have the richest house in the world,
Sure.
but if there's no love in that house, if there's no relationship and no connection. And I was just telling someone the other day, well, I remember one girl had posted, working all these doubles for my babies. I say, your babies would prefer you to be right with them. They don't want, and it was crazy because then a few weeks later, a girl had posted, my daughter said, Mommy, why do you have to go to work so much? And I mean, and it's just like, it's just so sad that quality relationships is not what's elevated, because that's what matters. When you think about what you have your greatest memories with, your most joyful times, what really matters, it's the quality of the relationships that you have.
Absolutely.
That's what makes or breaks your day.
That's right.
If you have quality relationship with God, then it flows to your family, then it flows to your husband, wife, or whoever you're in a relationship with, then your children, then your work, the people who you work with and all that. Why am I able to be so, I don't know just things don't bother me? Because it's nothing to me is ever that deep, because I believe it starts with the quality of my relationship with God. Number one, understanding where I came from. So I have a higher sense of just like understanding, like, I'm not going to be mad at people. I'm not going to be upset with people. And I'm not going to sit here and loathe in situations and of that nature. So we have to just teach our kids that relationships matter. So once you start your relationship with God, then it just trickles down to everyone else who you're involved with. And then there's some relationships that won't be restored and won't be renewed. And we can't sit here and say that that's a fault of, we can't blame ourselves. You can't sit there and say, like he said, there's some parents that you're just not going to be you might not be the greatest parent. You'll never know when you were a great parent. The key thing is, up until that you take your last breath, that you've strived to be
The
a
best.
present parent for that child like you were going to say, in the best way that you know how. That's what's key.
That's what I was thinking. There was, what was that? Okay, there it is. I'm going to share this quote with you guys quickly, and then we're going to move on to a Bible verse.
Yep.
Watch this. This quote was sent to me by, I think his name is American First, us. Hope if you're watching, you give us a shout out. Okay, thank you for this one here. It says America is like a healthy body. Its resistance is threefold: its patriotism, its morality, his spiritual life. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. And I think it's part of a plan to demoralize the country,
Yep.
to destroy the family circle. It's like this is what we are going through. There is this hatred of the country coming from within the people of the country, and there is this immorality. And I can see the family structure having been destroyed makes way for this one to become true as well. And also the spiritual life, prayers out of school, and we're gonna watch a video about that. No Bible in school and so on, and it's just like everything religious is bad.
Yeah.
It's like I
Everything that
understand we can
holds-
filter the apostasy and we can filter the hypocrisy. But they go as far as rejecting, throwing away the baby with the bathwater. It's like, wait a minute, we're getting rid of Jesus in the process here. It's like, and I
not
think
helpful.
it's not a good thing either. It's like God is literally absent from many Americans' lives. I did a little study where they were talking about before we used to send missionaries out in different parts of the world to do missionary work. Today, one of our schools, the one in Hamburg, majority of them are people from different parts of the world. Majority of them are Africans, and they're coming in the hope of evangelize Americans. And they're
Oh, wow.
saying we need help so much that
Yeah.
these people are coming in that are Christian, and they are going to our schools to get education, understand the language, so that they can minister to us, because they
Wow.
realize that America has a serious problem. We used to send missionaries. Now missionaries are being sent to us to help us because we are so far away from the way we used to be spiritually.
I
on this
can
side.
believe that. And one of the stats that he gave was that how, a father may spend 30 minutes with his child, but his child might spend 44 hours.
That is.
And you can look at, and this is what my daughter was saying, oh, I'm barely on my phone. And my son said, I'm barely on my phone. I said, just I know they have these different apps where you can actually clock and see how much you're on your phone.
Oh yeah.
You'll be shocked. These 5 minutes, these 10 minutes, these 15, and then the 3 and the 4 and the 2, they add up, and we can be on our phone for a long time.
And you sent me a video this morning where the person was talking about that.
Yeah.
Just the idea of waking up in the morning and check my phone.
Let me
Like,
check my
this week
emails.
I'm like, no, I know I'm supposed to. I'm supposed to wake up and pray, grab a book, get breakfast. The phone is gonna be okay. There's no serious emergency here. It's just when you start with checking the phone, it sets the premise for you to just
Constantly
be hooked on that.
checking.
One of the things that the person was talking about was just that if you want to be successful in life, you're going to have to learn how to get rid of the distractions that are in your life and start taking long term the way, instead of those little, intermediate stuff,
Instead of thinking
instant
short-term, think
gratification.
long-term.
Yeah. Instant gratification. Think of long terms goals and aim for that. This doesn't necessarily mean you can't do the things that you love. It's just that you can't live in these little moments, because that's what's keeping you away from going places. And I think, wow.
What keeps you from building relationships too? So, for instance, it was so funny when he said that, because I remember at work like a week or two ago, I was like, "Oh, go check your phone," and then I said no, because once you check your phone, you feel like you have to keep checking your phone because someone said something. So you're like, "Oh, I'll go on my break, and then I'll check here, I'll check there." And I said, no, you're not even going to look at your phone.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because when he said that, it was so true, because I noticed that if I check my phone, say someone's coming to do some repair work, or I need Amar to do something or anything like that, I become hyper focused on that in a sense, not hyper focused on it, but it just becomes like a central point of thinking versus in the things that I'm doing. So he said, like, don't check your emails. Don't do certain things right when you wake up. Let that be when it's absolutely necessary to check your email, necessary to check your phone. Like, I don't remember exactly when he said you should do it, but not when you first wake up.
No.
Because your brain, it just becomes hardwired in that addiction. It becomes like an addictive behavior then.
It is actually an addiction. It's been
Absolutely.
proven. Allie, I wanted to get to your comment. You said, I homeschooled mine and did my best to listen. Kids want to be heard, know that they are not invisible.
Yep, they want to be heard and know they're not invisible.
That is so true. And I'm also learning different ways to, like, when I'm doing things with my son, make it interesting, you know?
Well, that's what I was going to say when you said about, finding fun things to do. So I'm teaching BJ how to read. And so it's really been like fun. And I found books that are exciting. And when we're reading, we have fun with it. Or even when we did piano today, he changed the keys to be the animal sounds and sound effects. So we're playing C, D,
Oh, yeah.
E, or whatever. And then it's G, and it's like a horse, a cow, a pig, and something else. And then I'm like, okay, let's get back to the real thing. And let me tell you, he got that so much faster when you make it engaging and not
Yes.
so taxing and hard. So
Yeah.
there are ways that we do need to promote joy in our connections with them and even in their learning, because that is also another way. Like, you can take that piano time of teaching and then also make it fun, and then you're also connecting as well.
That is great.
And the reading time too, so it's not so like educational.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
One last thing, guys. Here it is right here. All right. You see my screen? Guys, fathers, this is for us. Provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them in a nurture and admonition of the Lord. Another thing too that been very intentional about with him is got these weekly verses that he's gonna learn, and finding different ways to sit down with your sons and teach them those spiritual things. I noticed with Josiah, for example, like a Bible study is not as fruitful for him than taking him out for a walk and find different spiritual lessons in the things that he's doing. You know,
Exactly.
like, and he just learns it. BJ today in his Bible study in our devotional, I used the globe, and I said, when Jesus comes, he's gonna take us to a place, and then he's gonna create everything new and bring us back here. Because when you speak to children about heaven, their perspective is like, what is that? And I'm like, no, well, the thing is, we're gonna live here, but we're gonna have earth made new. It's like I said, you never seen those TV shows when they're fixing somebody's home or remodeling the home
Yep.
and everything. They take
They
the
leave,
families
and then they kinda come
out
back.
and they fix the home, and they come back and they close their eyes and revealed it. I said, something like that is gonna happen again. And he was like so into it. And it's like, so he took a little character. He was like, okay, is this? So this character is Jesus. And then he pulls us with him, and he takes us to heaven. And then he comes back in this big building, and he lays it on the earth. And I'm like, you got it, But it was crazy. Just using that illustration itself opened his
Yeah.
mind so much, and he was able to see physically, like, oh, that's what it's gonna be like.
Yeah.
He was so interested in that Bible study. So
That's
so
awesome.
finding different props and different means to, like, create things with your family, and I know there are different ways we can do it, but we can do it, guys. It's not difficult. Just remember that the most important thing is you
Spending time,
it's
quality
you.
time. You don't have to come up with all these great ideas, but
Yeah.
that's one thing that I definitely always knew that my kids would be better off having their father present than getting money.
Yeah.
I think it's just something that as women we know. I don't know, it's something innate in us,
Yeah.
I believe. And with men, it's something that some men get it off the hand right away, but other men, I think it just takes some time to really build that understanding of this is important to spend time.
And it goes back to a lot of men who never had that example. You know what I'm saying? So you pass down what you were given. And oftentimes, if they weren't given that fatherly moment and stuff like that, they themselves can. Oh, Mike Griffin says, Pastor,